Virginia Satir was born in Neillsville, Wisconsin in 1916. She was a bright child with an explosive sense of curiosity. She taught herself how to read at the age of 3 and recalled wanting to become a detective on Parents for Children when she was very young. This early interest in uncovering the truth became a lifelong passion throughout her therapeutic practice. Satir attended school in a one-room schoolhouse and gives this as the reason she graduated high school at the age of 15. She was known to say, "I could study all the grades at the same time." Shortly after she graduated, she walked over to the Milwaukee State Teachers College, now the University of Wisconsin, and made application without consulting her parents, who found out when the admissions office called them. She earned her bachelor's degree in education in 1936, and she worked as a teacher for 6 years and continued her studies as a graduate student by taking classes in the summers at Northwestern University in Chicago, beginning in 1937. After completing her thesis and receiving her master's in social work from the University of Chicago School of Social Services Administration in 1948, Satir immediately began a private practice, and within a few years she was offered a position with the Illinois Psychiatric Institute. While there, she worked with other therapists to teach them the importance of addressing the whole family during treatment, not just the individual client. She was a very early recognizer of the interdependence between the individual and the family. In 1959, after relocating to California, Satir helped to establish the Mental Research Institute. Through this organization, Satir and her staff developed the first training series designed specifically to teach family therapy techniques. She became the training director and used her years of expertise to coordinate and deliver the program to clinicians throughout the country. She also led the training program at Esalen Institute in Big Sur, California. Satir devoted much of her career to helping people find the necessary mental health resources for their needs. In 1970, she founded the International Human Learning Resources Network, and in 1977 she created the Avanta Network. Both were intended to provide resources and support to mental health workers. Throughout her career, Satir taught hundreds of workshops and trainings in her family therapy methods, and she worked as a social worker and therapist. She died in 1988 at the age of 72 of pancreatic cancer. She had planned to be conducting a training and was on the phone with her staff giving direction hours before she died. Satir's transformational systemic therapy, also known as the Satir growth model, emphasizes engaging the inner self, looking in a balanced way that she referred to as congruence, not just at the self, but also at the context and the others involved. Virginia is commonly referred to as the mother of family therapy. She is one of very few women theorists and the only developer of a highly successful and enduring school of practice who did not earn a doctorate. She was awarded several honorary doctorates, and it's actually pretty telling that she's profiled with famous psychologists. Her model is also in use in business consulting and executive coaching, not only in the US, but in Canada, Australia, and China. If you're interested and would like to learn more, it's easy to find out about Virginia on the internet. Just search her name. There are even some interviews and demonstrations on YouTube. So Virginia's big idea is that people are like icebergs. I know, sounds crazy. And at this point, the iceberg is a somewhat overused metaphor. But believe it or not, Virginia and her team probably bear some responsibility for that. So, what did she mean? Simply this, that people's behavior, what we observe them doing, is just the tip of the iceberg. All the important stuff driving that behavior takes place beneath the surface. So, the first important lesson in Satir is that you are the iceberg. Each one of us has an iceberg, and we are the iceberg. You could refer to it either way. So what's this important stuff? Well, let me tell you. We've got our behavior, obviously. That's at the top, above the surface. Beneath the surface, we confront our first player, our feelings. Next, our feelings about our feelings. These are worth mentioning separately from feelings. Recent research has shown us that we, as humans, are much more impacted by the feelings we have about our feelings, much more than the feelings themselves. Virginia knew this, although the published research bore it out much later. Next, our thoughts, which involve our conscious beliefs and perceptions. You've heard the phrase, perception is reality? Well, it really is, and it lives in each one of our icebergs. Next, come our expectations. These are at least threefold: what we expect of others, what we expect of ourselves, and the expectations others have of us. This is the point at which we really begin bringing others interactively into our iceberg in a way that's very prominent. And it can get complex. We even have beliefs about what others think we expect of them, and others have beliefs about what we think they expect of us. So I just like to keep it to the three for simplicity's sake, because there's more to the iceberg. Next are the yearnings. These are the universal longings that drive behavior. Virginia's techniques were brought to many cultures, from tribal to industrialized, and the yearnings she found were actually the same across the board. Different from desires, yearnings are the driving force behind desires. They usually involve basic physical or emotional needs, like a yearning for safety or for belonging, for freedom, for impact, for purpose, that sort of thing. Lastly is the self. Self is always capitalized in the Satir model. Virginia believed that all people have a life force within them that is indestructible. She also believed that everyone could access this core, and it held the key to having all the energy and resources that we need. Now, she understood that she was treading in spiritual territory and that the range of spiritual beliefs is wide. And since I've begun using the Satir model, I've worked with all manner of people with all manner of belief systems. She must have been right, because I never get in the argument. We're born with a right to life force that's more inalienable than the rights bestowed on us by our constitutions. There's one more official part to the iceberg, and we're not going to go into that immediately. Virginia placed it at the surface of the water, and it's called the coping stances. There's a complexity to the coping stances, and that's why I don't want to go into them right now, because these parts of the iceberg have sufficient complexity for one sitting. So we will save those for another video. Now, all that said, it's acknowledged among practitioners of the Satir growth model that the iceberg is a living metaphor, and as such, we may discover new parts. I've added 2 such parts that I think are quite important and will influence our work. The first I call excitements. Excitements in the healthy person are highly motivating impulses, attracting them to do a particular thing simply for the joy of it. Now, excitements may involve pursuing a particular goal, but they don't have to, and particularly for children. They're not goal-oriented usually at all, although sometimes. The other thing about excitements is that sometimes when we're under a lot of pressure, or maybe even a little depressed, we might have difficulty finding anything exciting. In the healthy and clear person, excitements are near the surface, and they function as trusted advisors. But when people are experiencing toxic levels of stress, it can be hard to find them. So excitements really are in both places, near the core and at the surface, waiting to be acted upon. The other part of the iceberg that I've added is unconscious negative beliefs. Unconscious beliefs that create difficulty are always false, and they're always trying to remain hidden, so a person might not have full awareness of harboring one. We're not born with them, and they are typically installed through traumatic experiences, often in early childhood. And these experiences aren't always or even usually the type of serious events that trigger PTSD. They're more like everyday disappointments that become overwhelming to an infant or small child. But if someone has some of these unconscious negative beliefs, such as unworthiness or something similar, it colors every part of their iceberg while simultaneously creating diversions in order to disguise the fact. Beliefs like this can lead to problems socially, problems with achievement, and also with life satisfaction, relationship problems, that kind of thing. Virginia talked a lot about the importance of self-esteem, which is a pretty dated concept right now, and I think what she really meant was ensuring that the unconscious was clear of these false negative beliefs that usually have to do with worthiness. One good thing is that there's more hope than ever for supporting people in releasing any unconscious beliefs that hold them back. Many good interventions that work, and often extremely quickly, and that's one of the things that excites me most about working with families.